All right.
Once again, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Baby Steps, Building a Better You. I am Bart Bartlett with Peggy Simpson, both of us coming to you from St. Louis. Peggy, how's your Thursday going?
It's going really well. How about you?
Going well. It's a beautiful day outside
It
and
is.
getting ready for storms tonight, but that's okay. Bring them on. I always sleep better in the storms. What about you?
Well, as long as they're not too noisy, I'll be okay, right? But yeah, it has been very nice to see the sunshine all day today.
Absolutely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you probably know, last week we've been doing this web series now for a couple of weeks, and in the last week for 6 episodes, we each reviewed a different book, and we talked about that book and how that book empowered us in our own journey for personal development, personal empowerment. And then we thought, wouldn't it be fun that we just take turns asking each other a question unknown to the other person based on those books? So, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen because the very first book, the very first book that we talked about were the Four Agreements.
Yep.
And these are the Four Agreements, just so everyone will know. And the Four Agreements are: be impeccable with your word, which the author said is probably one of the hardest to do, if not the hardest to do. Another agreement is don't make assumptions, don't take anything personally, and always do your best. If you do those four things right there are the gateway to empowerment for you to live a very happy, successful life. Any thoughts on that before I ask my question and take this off the screen?
Well, we talked at length about these four agreements and how they are so fundamentally important, right? To get yourself ready and prepared. And you're only as good as your word. And people, that's the first thing that people have to be able to trust you with, right? So no, other than that, I don't think I have any comments. I'm sitting here in anticipation, wondering what this
Okay, here it is. So we started with the Four Agreements and then we went through 5 other books, all different but all related somewhere. Here's your challenge if you decide to accept it. If you were to say, based on those other 5 books, there was a 5th agreement that you need to adopt in your life, what would that 5th agreement be? This just came to me this morning.
Wow, a 5th agreement. Well, I think I would have to go with maintaining a positive attitude.
Okay.
Okay. Because your word is important, but you also have to, and this is a little bit, it's not just being plappy, okay? as Tillman said in his book, Shut Up and Listen, right? Because it sort of is, but it, I think, goes a little bit deeper than that. And it's the attitude of gratitude, right? You have to have that positive, grateful position to every day, because that also, I think, opens doors for in your mind for some of the possibility, opportunity thinking that Maxwell talked about. I think Peter Hirsch also talked about being grateful, right? And there are a couple of other thoughts that I have that are quite close, but I think that if you don't have an attitude of gratitude and understand why you are grateful, it's not just a matter of, I said it's great to see the sun, right? And that's it is. It's great to see the sun, but why am I grateful for the sun today as opposed to any other day? Why did that hit me today? Because we've had so much rain lately. And because I was in a very focused, thoughtful mood working on business tasks, and that adds energy to me. So that's why I was grateful for the sun today, as opposed to the sun may be out tomorrow, and I may not really notice it. But I think finding things every day to be grateful for, and if you have that grateful attitude with everyone you speak with everything you do, and you don't carry, we all have issues on our minds and things that we're pondering, but if you don't carry doom and gloom into every conversation you come into, it'll also help you with those other 4 agreements, because you'll be in a better mood and more conscious, I think, aware mood, to pay attention to what you're saying and not overcommit. Plus, it gives you a great feeling if you write these things that you're grateful for every day, if you write them down, and then every week or every month, you go back and review them. And it reminds you, no matter, even in this pandemic situation, there are always things that we must be grateful for, and that we should be grateful for. So I think that for me, that probably would be a 5th agreement of having an attitude of gratitude.
I love that. And from what you said, I would make the case and make the assumption that there is gratitude within going through this pandemic.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. My heart goes out to people who have lost loved ones, to people who've had long illnesses during this time. Losing loved ones is a very difficult thing, no matter when it happens. But we all know that this life ends the same for all of us, right? None of us get out of this alive.
Right.
So if you've lost people during this pandemic, be grateful that you had them in their lives. Celebrate their life, right? Celebrate the blessings that they brought to you. Be grateful that it didn't take more people from your family, perhaps. But there's always, and there are times such as that when you've lost someone that you have to dig even deeper, right? To find those things that you're grateful for. But I promise you that if you spend the time each day, you'll find something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Okay, here's mine, because I started thinking about this. I thought, what would be the 5th agreement? And I think each author either specifically addressed this or at least referenced it in some respect. And I'm going to use, and I know you're going to have a hard time believing this, I'm going to use a theatrical reference to this, okay? And it comes from the musical Hamilton. And it's something that Aaron Barr told Alexander Hamilton. And it was the piece of advice he gave him. And that advice was, talk less, listen more. And when I started thinking about that, then I kind of even Googled it. I mean, there is research out there that shows the truly successful people, the truly successful leaders are people who talk less and listen more. And I thought, wow, that's pretty powerful. I know that Les Brown talked about it. I know that Peter Hirsch spoke about it. John Maxwell's written volumes on it. Brian Tracy has as well. And I think when you talk about the 4 agreements, that may be kind of an overarching agreement there. That if you're going to be impeccable with your word, what are you going to do? You're going to talk less. You're going to make sure your words are words of value. If you don't take anything personally, what are you doing? You're listening, and you realize that feedback is nothing more than information. That's all it is. It's someone else's opinion. That's what.
Yeah, that's true, and that goes along with the other 4 agreements too, where it says don't take things personally, right?
Right.
And God did give us 2 ears and 1 mouth, so there must have
That's
been a
very
purpose.
true.
Yeah,
Right.
there must have been a purpose for that.
Mm.
That we needed to listen,
Hmm.
and it is important.
Right.
How many communications break down
Mhm.
because we don't listen? How many times have you had a conversation with someone and you said you're
Mhm.
not listening?
Right.
You're not listening to what I'm saying, and we use that phrase a lot. Whether they weren't listening or whether we weren't communicating right, it could go both ways. But many times we listen for what we want to respond with instead of listening to what we should be hearing, what the other person is actually saying and what they're trying to tell us. So we get ahead of ourselves, particularly if you're trying to listen, if you're listening to a problem, right? I know I'm guilty. When I'm listening to something, my mind is already down the road
Right.
thinking, what could this be caused from, and how can we fix it? How can we mitigate the problem,
Hmm.
prevent it from happening again? My mind will be racing down the road before they've totally finished. And I have to be very careful of that because many times, especially if it's a new thought, if it's not a problem, but a new thought that somebody's just brainstorming about,
Right.
again, I may in my mind have already said, oh, that's a good idea, but what do we have to look out for? And
Mhm.
that'll be the first thing out of my mouth when that really is discouraging
Mhm.
for
Mhm.
people because their mind hasn't gone down that path with
Right.
me yet, right?
Right.
I quickly said, oh, that's a great idea. Now I'm in, how do we make it happen, and what would be the speed bumps that we need to think about? And so the speed bumps will be the first things I talk about when I really shouldn't. I should acknowledge, right? If I was listening to what they were saying, I should acknowledge, give them the respect and courtesy to
Mhm.
acknowledge that their idea was good.
Mhm.
And then eventually take my time for when it's the right time. When others around me, if I listen to where they are in their process, when they're ready to hear the speed bumps, then I can be ready with those answers.
Absolutely. In fact, I even contend that if you do talk less and listen more, by talking less, you've opened yourself up for more areas of gratitude. Because
Can
that
you give me an example?
you're more observant.
Okay.
When you're
I can see
talking,
that.
you're engaged, but are you observant? When you're listening, you're observant. And even clutter and noise surrounding what you're hearing, you pick up on that too. And so even if you're in an office and it's noisy, if we remember what offices were before this pandemic, you're in an
True.
office and it's noisy and you guys go someplace else to talk and it's quiet and you start to listen, there's gratitude right there.
Yeah, I had never really thought about it that way, but you're probably right.
It just came to me as you were talking. I thought, and I heard what you were saying. I thought, well, I think when you talk less, even though if you're thinking about this, your mind is way down the road. One of the gratitudes that I heard you say was you realize you got to bring it back to where they are too in order to work with them. You bring it back to them rather than them expect to catch up to you.
Right. Yeah, I can cite I had a personal experience with not listening. This was, let's see, this was in the, well, it doesn't matter the time frame. I was on the administrative staff of a hospital. Yeah. And the CEO had called me in and said that he was planning to do some reorgs and that he was planning to promote me to a new title. And I thought, okay, great. That would have made me equal with his other direct reports because they were all vice presidents and I was a director. And so, as I normally did, we all did, anyone who reported to him, we attended the board meetings, right? Well, the direction that he was going to take me was to have all of the IT department report to me with that promotion, because they currently reported to somebody in a gentleman who reported in through HR.
Mhm.
So we got in the meeting, and I don't even remember, this has been way too many years ago, but we got in the meeting and something about IT came up, right? And it was something that I knew about. So I began to, when the topic came up, I jumped into the conversation and began explaining.
Mhm.
But so the next day, he called me in and he said, okay, he said, now I have to tell you, I have to take back what I told you yesterday. And I said, what was that? And he said, I'm not going to promote you.
Mhm.
And I said, really, why? And he said, you don't listen.
Ooh.
Yeah, that was his exact phrase. You don't listen.
Ooh.
And I I was kind of taken aback, right? So I left. I said, okay, well, I can't fight City Hall, right? He's the CEO. He's the only person who can make that decision. But I had to think about it. Clearly, it was that meeting, right?
Mhm.
That's the only thing that had transpired where he and I had been in the same room of any significance. So I began to read. I began to read about communications.
Mhm.
And he was absolutely right. I wasn't ready.
Mhm.
And I didn't listen because I wasn't listening to where they were. I wasn't cognizant about the level of person that was in that room around that table, about their lack of detailed information, nor they didn't have any detailed information coming in, nor were they seeking it at the table.
Mhm.
But I was offering it, right? So clearly there was a disconnect, and he was absolutely right not to give it to me at that time, much as I hated it. He was
Wow.
right. He was right.
What a
It was
powerful
probably one of
story.
the biggest lessons learned I've had in my entire professional career.
Wow. What a
But
powerful story.
but boy, did it arm me. That study, I kept reading books and more books until I saw the same theme recurring over and over. And I came across some really valuable tools to study communication, um, especially meeting communications.
Mhm. Mhm.
But it was it was a tough lesson to learn.
Wow. Wow. Well,
Yeah.
let's give a shout out to Keith and Sandra and Kimberly, Eric, and Kenny for joining us. And Keith had a great comment. Keith said, I have a daily issue with this every day. And so, and but you're right, listening is, and what did you do? I mean, you did something that right there, the four agreements would give you, a big gold star for. You didn't take what he said personally.
No.
It may have hurt, but you didn't take what he said personally. You went and found a solution. You went and said, I'm not going to let this happen again.
Yeah.
And went and tried to find a solution. You
Yeah.
know, who would have ever thought back Aaron Burr to Alexander Hamilton, before everybody got his picture on the $10 bill, before then, talk less, listen more.
Yeah.
And is that not one of the fundamental things that we, not me, I've never done this, but I know you have, teach your children?
Yeah.
Growing up.
Yeah. I probably didn't emphasize it enough to my kids.
Okay.
And speaking of, let me give a shout out to Becca and Lewis. They're on the line over here on this end.
See.
But yeah, I probably could have emphasized that more, actually, very directly more to my kids than I did. But yeah, that was I couldn't be mad,
No.
but I certainly didn't make the connection initially. And it wasn't until I started reading. It wasn't like I went back and I said, oh, I know what it was. I did this in that meeting. I didn't. I still didn't know what I did
Wow.
until
Wow.
I started reading.
Yeah.
Until I had read a couple of books, and I would reflect back on that meeting and think about it, and I finally figured it out.
Wow.
And I had an opportunity later to ask him.
Mhm.
After I thought I knew, I went back and asked him. because he wasn't the type of person, I said to myself, if he wanted me to know the reasoning of why he made that decision and why I didn't listen, he would have told me at that time.
Mhm.
So I didn't go back. I didn't ask him any further questions about that
Mhm.
when he told me. But later I went back. This was probably, I don't know, might have been a couple of months later. I went back and it was the appropriate time where I could ask him the question. And I said, by the way, I said, I want to tell you that I concur. You were right, that I didn't listen in the boardroom that day after you had told me you were going to promote me. And then the next day you told me you weren't. But I said, I want to ask you, was it because of this? And he said, now you understand.
Wow. Wow. What a great lesson.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. It was.
Wow. Well, it's about that time. Let me show our schedule for this weekend. We're going to be back here on Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Central. And I am going to be incredibly nervous because Peggy asked me a question. It'll be her third and final question, and I'll have a chance on the following Tuesday. But tell your friends, come back and join us, because this is something that she and I have really enjoyed putting together and sharing. And who knows where it's going to go from here. But we do know this much. We're going to start inviting some people on to be with us. We're going to just break this into just a continual dialogue, because I think that's something we need right now, especially just a little distraction for what we're going through.
Yep, I agree. Can't wait. Can't wait till Saturday. My turn.
Your turn. Okay. Everyone have a great Thursday. Have a great Friday ahead, and we'll see you back here on Saturday.
Yep. Bye everyone.